there you have it. I mean, you can't even argue with that decision. I mean, you have Haas and Jackson Hinkle doing this very thing, and I think to especially like a layman, you seeing that it would be confusing because you would think like, oh, right, so there's been a lot of talk about the Russian ruble. It took a little bit of a dip earlier when it first invaded Ukraine. We see that, right? Oh, looks like the invasion's not so bad, right? Tankies would agree. Two favorite tankies would agree, in fact. Jackson Hinkle. The Russian ruble has already bounced back to pre-war levels. This means that Joe Biden's sanction war, which sparked astronomical gas prices, an unprecedented surge in fertilizer prices, future food shortages, and an inflation crisis was all for nothing. And then Haas, two shitlibs. Remember when you keep mocking inflation as the Russian ruble? Why so silent now? And so they're not wrong. The Russian ruble has bounced back. And so I think what they're really missing here though is this isn't because of nothing. Like Russia did a lot of stuff between when did it go to shit? It went to shit on the 26th or the day after the 26th, 27th. On March 1st it went to shit. And then a little bit on April 1st, March 29th, it came back to normal. Why is that? Let's see. From our good old friend, not a socialist, Paul Krugman, in a New York Times op-ed, Working Out the Curious Case for the Recovering Ruble by Paul Krugman, an opinion columnist. He's also an economist. He's won a Nobel Prize in economics, I believe. Paul Krugman, in full Paul Robin Krugman, American economist and journalist who received a 2008 for his work in economic geography and identifying international trade patterns. He was also known for his op-ed column in the New York Times. It has now been known for 37 days since Vladimir Putin forces reportedly thought they could capture Kiev, dead named, within 48 to 72 hours. Many news reports described the Russian invasion as stalled, but as I read the detailed analyses, and I don't really care to look at this. This is also a little old, just to give fair warning. This is a little bit dated news. This is on April 1st, so 20 days ago. That isn't quite right. Ukrainian forces are counterattacking, and in many places Russia appears to be losing ground. One thing Russia has managed to defend quite effectively, however, is the value of its currency. The ruble plunged in the days after the Ukrainian invasion, but it has since recovered almost all of its losses. And this is what I was showing earlier, and this is what Haas and Jackson were picking up on. Those clever chaps. How did this happen? What does it mean? One thing worth noting is that the Russian economic officials appear to be more competent than its generals. Elivra Nabiulina, the governor of Russian central bank, a role equivalent to that of Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve, is especially well regarded by our peers abroad. I'm just going to call her Nab. Nab reportedly tried to resign after the invasion started, but Putin wouldn't let her leave. I can't blame her. Unwillingly as she may have been to stay in her job, Nab and her colleagues pulled out of the stops to defend the ruble. They raised the key interest rate, more or less equivalent to the federal funds rate in the United States, from 9.2 to 20%. So that's insane. So that makes a lot of sense. So if you want to invest in Russian bonds, it seems like it's a pretty good idea unless you're a foreigner. To induce people to keep their funds in Russia. They also impose extensive controls to prevent capital flight. Russia has faced restrictions on moving their money into foreign bank accounts, and foreign investors have been prohibited from exiting Russian stocks and more. So do we all see where this is going? It's starting to make sense, right? And we're about to get into it. Where he talks about the Impossible Trinity. That's what I think what'll be really interesting to look at. But there's no mystery here, or there's a mystery here. No, it's not puzzling to see the ruble recover given such drastic measures. The question is why Russia is willing to defend its currency at the expense of all other goals. After the draconian measures taken to stabilize the ruble will probably deepen what is already looking like a depression-level slump in Russia's real economy, brought on by surprisingly wide and effective sanctions imposed by the free world. I think we can resurrect the term, don't you, in response to its military aggression. So do we understand that though? It makes a lot of sense considering like look at Haas and Jackson. So they don't even care about they don't care at all about, the rate being increased from 9.5 to 20%. The the restrictions placed on Russians putting their money into foreign bank accounts. They don't care about the restrictions placed on foreign investors. All they care about is the exchange rate. And the reason that is because it's obviously such a huge, huge propaganda. Like, it's so easy to point to just say, like, hey, look at that. The exchange rate's fine. Our economy must be doing fine. But it's so not correct when you consider, like, the restrictions and the trade-offs the Russian central bank has made to make that happen. So it's impossible. It's incredible. Let's take a brief excursion into economic theory here. One of the classic propositions in international economics is known as the Impossible Trinity. This is a good one. I don't know if we need to look at this. And so basically there's three things you can have with your currency. They're obviously all good things, but you could only pick two. And Russia has seemed to abandon everything to pick one. The idea is that there are three things a country might want from its currency. It might want stability in the currency's value in terms of other currencies. For example, a stable value of the ruble in dollars or euros to create greater certainty for businesses. It might want free movement of funds across its borders, again, to facilitate business. And it might want to retain freedom of monetary action, the ability to cut interest rates to fight recessions or raise them to fight inflation. The Impossible Trinity says that you can't have all of it. You have to choose two out of the three. You can, like Britain, have an open capital market, independent monetary policy, but that means allowing the value of the pound to fluctuate. You can, like countries that adopt the euro, have free movement of capital and currency stability, but only by giving up monetary independence. Or you can, like China, have a stable currency in your own monetary policy, but only by controlling and maintaining capital controls. Only by maintaining capital controls. Those controls, by the way, are one main reason the renminbi isn't going to rival a dollar as a global currency. Is that what they call the Chinese currency? Yeah, I thought it was just called the yuan. What? So what is puzzling about Russia? Normally a country can choose two out of the three of the Trinity. Russia has decided to take only one. It has imposed severe capital controls, but it has also sacrificed monetary independence, drastically raising interest rates in the face of a looming recession. In effect, Russia is taking a belt and suspender, not to be confused with Belt and Road. Classic, dude. This is why he won the Nobel Prize. Approach to defending the ruble. This has seemingly taken priority over all other economic goals. Why? Let me offer a speculation with the clear proviso that is only a speculation, not based on any direct evidence. My guess is that the value of the ruble has become a crucial target, not so much because it's all important, but because it's clearly visible. And again, let me go back to Haas and Jackson Hinkle. Two very big Russia proponents, always trying to argue the strength of Russia and that Russia did no wrong and they're going to win Ukraine, so on and so forth, that Russia is the greatest. And here they are making that exact point for Paul Krugman. Suppose that, as seems highly likely, Russia sees a huge surge in inflation and a plunge in gross domestic product in the months ahead. Will Putin's government admit that these bad things are happening? Quite possibly not. An authoritarian regime often tries to suppress unfavorable economic data. Recently, for example, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. I know how to say that too. I've heard that said multiple times. Responded to reports of high inflation by sacking the head of his nation's statistical agency. Classic, yes. Some years ago, researchers at MIT created the Billion Prices Project using online price data to specifically track the consistent understatement of inflation by Argentina's government at the time. The same approach also turned out to be very useful in the United States for the opposite reason, as a way to refute claims by right-wing inflation truthers that the Obama administration was cooking the books. It wasn't. If Russia's economy deteriorates as badly as most expected in the near future, it seems all too likely that the nation's muzzled media will simply deny that anything bad is happening. One thing they cannot deny, however, would be a drastically depreciating ruble. So defending the ruble, never mind the real economy, makes sense as a propaganda strategy. A further thought, among the people who might not be aware of deteriorating Russia's economic conditions as long as the ruble holds its value, might be Vladimir Putin himself. U.S. intelligence claims that Putin's military advisors have been afraid to tell him how badly the war is going. Is there any reason to believe that economic advisors will be any more courageous? So there you have it. You can't even argue with that decision. I mean, you have Haas and Jackson Hinkle doing this very thing. And I think especially like a layman, you seeing that, it would be confusing because you would think like, oh, like I thought it's almost like, like when you think about like a stock and then some news comes out and everyone's like the coronavirus. I should just do S&P. It'll be easier. S and so you have this, in a month's time, basically, you lose a ton of value, and then boom, it really starts cranking. And I kind of think that's what Haas and Jackson Hinkle are trying to say. And I think that's what most people kind of see when they see that. When they see the ruble come back like that, they kind of think like, oh, like, was that just the initial reaction of people, thinking it was a dumb mistake? But it actually turns out it's actually like there's a big missed opportunity there, and people are taking advantage of it, similar to the COVID S&P. But as Krugman laid out, it's really because Russia pulled a bunch of different other levers that are probably going to hurt in terms of the real economy, but really be effective in maintaining the ruble's value. All about the propaganda win. And I wanted to highlight that too. Vladimir Putin himself, that Putin's advisors may be afraid to tell him how badly it's going. U.S. Intel says Putin believes he's winning the Ukraine war and the West will give up on trying to isolate him. And people always talk about this, and I think a lot of people don't take it very seriously, and this is like one of the huge benefits of democracy. I think a lot of people get very enamored thinking that, it makes sense. It makes sense like if you don't really think about the trade-offs, it makes sense why you think like democracy is stupid. Like I live in America, so it's very easy to say like, is all this like electoral, all this election business, is it really worth it? It seems like we like, everyone gets all heated and divided and pissed off at each other. And, politicians are really just saying what makes the masses happy. Kind of like in a bread and circus kind of ways where no one's life is really getting better or nothing's like getting better like in a substantive long-term way. It's all kind of like short-term, like, bread and circuses kind of thing, where you could have like a smart long-term thinking autocrat like Xi Jinping. He's kind of the classic example, and he can go up there and, he can come up with a plan. He doesn't have to worry about getting elected. He can kind of like cut through all the red tape. He knows what he needs to do, and he can go get it. But that's also the issue. Because when you have that much power in one person, he could make or break your political career. Like entirely. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in like a democracy. It can happen. But when you're talking about having that much power in one person, you have to appease that one person. But that's not really a thing in a democracy. You don't have to appease one person. You could piss one person off and still have a career. But the issue is that when your entire political career is based on one person kind of giving you the yes or no, like, yeah, you're in this position, you're not in this position, you're gonna get this promotion, you're not gonna get this promotion. You get really scared to disappoint someone. And so, and it's always gonna be easier to tell someone good news than it is bad news. And that's kind of the issue with a dictator, is because obviously they want the best things for their policy decisions. And so it's good for you to tell them that they're getting the best things for their policy decisions. You're probably going to get in a lot of trouble if you're telling them, like, hey, your decisions are not going well. But then you create the situation where the dictator's ability to make further decisions, later decisions, will only be worse because they're making a decision, getting incorrect feedback, and thinking, oh, that's a good way to make the decision. I'm going to make a decision like that again. And then they keep making these decisions without ever getting a feedback. Like, it's kind of like if you wanted to get good at a sport, every time you shot the basketball, you'd have no idea if it went in. Now imagine if you were just airballing imagine if you couldn't see the hoop and you're still shooting and someone's telling you it's going in, but you're airballing the shit out of it. It's going to make you worse. But if you're shooting, you can't see it go in the hoop or whatever, but they're telling you, like, oh, you're getting closer, now you're getting farther, oh, you're hitting the rim. Eventually you'll be able to make it if that person's not lying to you and you're like genuinely trying to help you. You can eventually get it in. But if someone's telling you every time you shoot the basketball blind that, like, oh, yep, went in, yep, that went in, you're going to be all over the map in terms of shooting, and you're probably never going to make it unless you get incredibly lucky. And so this is kind of the dictator trap through a basketball analogy, that you're not getting the feedback you need as a decision maker to make good decisions. It's fine to make bad decisions. What matters is that you develop a robust process to make decisions, and then when you make a decision, you do your best to learn from the outcomes of a decision you made.
Putin is facing struggles both at home and the battlefield. So I want to get your take on him and what might be next. Is there perhaps some sort of off-ramp?
Let's get it going here, buddy.
Victory he can claim to wind this down, or do you think he's committed all in? And if his future, how does the rest of the world re-engage with him and Russia whenever this conflict might end? Or are they now going forward, as long as he's in charge, Cuba or North Korea?
Well, I think the first thing is we need to dispel the myth of what Donald Trump called the savvy genius strongman. This is not a savvy genius. He's not behaving like a savvy genius. He's irrational. And he's behaving irrationally because he's fallen into what I call the dictator trap, which is the fact that to stay in power, dictators do things that ultimately and eventually cause their downfall because they construct fake realities, and then they make mistakes based on their belief in those fake realities. When you think about what Vladimir Putin gets on a daily basis in terms of information, he's been in power for 2 decades. People who cross him lose power and might see their families fall off balconies. It's a very, very dangerous situation to be in. And I think the real question here...
Oh my God, how many people are on this panel?
So I think there's going to be a pariah status for Russia for the foreseeable future, and I hope that's the case. I think it's important also that the oligarchs around Putin know that this is not a temporary change, that this is genuinely the new way of the future, that they will be isolated. They will not be sailing their yachts around the Mediterranean. They will not be stashing their cash in offshore bank accounts easily. They will not be buying up property in Belgravia in London. And as soon as they get that message, as soon as their lives become significantly more Russian, I think that provides the end game in which Vladimir Putin can be forced out of power by people who have greased the wheels for him for the last 2+ decades.
I want to take a question of David Ignatius. Brian, I'm curious whether you see any cracks in the inner circle around Putin. I don't mean the oligarchs who depend on him for patronage, but I mean the Siloviki, the security services that really shield his regime. Do you see any evidence that those people who do have the power to make changes in Russia are moving toward action?
I don't see evidence, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the reason for that is because these things often convey themselves in tipping points. So once somebody moves against a dictator, it's an extremely risky thing to do on their own. But once there's an environment in which multiple people think we can do this, that's when it moves very, very quickly. I mean, when you predict things like the Arab Spring, I mean, nobody thought Ben Ali would face collapse in late 2000.
Yeah. So not the... It's interesting. I mean, we'll see. I think that's something that's really hard to measure, but I don't know if Xi Jinping has that. I don't think he's in the dictator trap, but I definitely think Putin is. Definitely think Putin is.